next speaker, Rebecca Emmett. She has a very rich background. I will just say that currently she works with Jews United for Justice in Washington, D.C. I'm happy to call on Rebecca Emmett.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Hoffman. I have a background in theater as well, so that's one of the reasons. So thank you so much for the introduction, Rabbi Hoffman, and especially thank you to Sandy. What's your name? Hi. Sandy's amazing. I've been on the phone with her many times. And to all my teachers and my colleagues in this work, some of whom are here, especially for Rabbi Tucker, who is an amazing teacher of mine. And I'm also just very grateful to Hashem for my life and for bringing me here to speak to you today. I want to tell you a little bit about my rich background. Unfortunately, I wasn't rich growing up. But I was raised, I'm a matrilineal Jew. I was raised in two households, my Jewish mother's household and my Catholic father's household. My mother is the child of immigrants in Brooklyn, and my father is a Midwestern Irish Catholic from Michigan. Both my parents really fled their childhood families and religions and had very little interest in raising me in any faith, but both of them were also quite unassimilated and had very strong ethnic consciousness. So I identified for a long time as half Jewish and half Catholic, until a lot of Jewish people kept telling me throughout my childhood that there was no such thing and that wasn't possible. And around that same time, I was about 11, I started identifying religiously as a Jew. And another important thing to know about me is that when I was a young person, I was extremely sentimental, and I was very spiritual, and I really liked ritual, and I talk to God in a kind of "Are you there, God? It's me, Rebecca" kind of way. So that was sort of like, I was always going to be a religious person, and when I decided to be a Jew, it was just like pretty clear to me what I was going to choose at that point. I became a firm Jew when I was 23, and as I said, I think it's in my bio, I had the opportunity to study at Yeshivat Hadar with Ethan and with Sarah Mulhern and Will Friedman, who are here in the audience, and it's a pleasure to see you guys here. So I was there for 2 sessions, and that's how I ended up here. I'm going to ask a few questions, and I just want people to raise their hands in the answer to these questions. You don't have to if you don't want to identify yourself, that's fine. But I just, so I have a sense of who's here. Who's an AJR student or faculty? Okay. Who identifies as religious? Who identifies as secular? You can do both, it's okay. People who identify as in a specific denomination, you don't have to say which one, just a denomination. Okay, cool. And traditional, that's the word you use. Egalitarian. Post-denominational. Cool. This is always a fun thing, how far can these terms spread? Okay, who's under 30? Okay, cool. Who has kids? Who has parents? We all have parents, okay. Who has Gentiles in your extended family? Okay, cool. Anybody else besides me who's mixed heritage? Small numbers. Anybody who is a convert? A parent who converted? Yeah, that's cool too. Okay, great. Whose Jewish life now looks really different from your upbringing? Okay, great. And who feels like an outsider in certain Jewish settings? Cool. Okay, so I'll say, I feel like I have 2 audiences here. It was neat to see who all is in the room, but when I was thinking about this talk, I kind of felt like I have 2 sort of audiences and 2 roles. There's a lot more, but these are pigeonholing you. The first role that I have is to present kind of an accurate picture for people who aren't mixed heritage, sorry, feel bad for you, of what it's like and how we'd like to be understood. And coming just off of the holiday of Purim, it's a little bit perhaps it is for this moment that I came to the palace of the king. Here I am, taking off the mask, telling you what it's like. But more importantly, I'm here to meet and be with my people, which is all of you, but also is mixed heritage Jews. And I want to speak really well about us, because people say a lot about us that is quite naive or incorrect and often disrespectful. very meaningful to have your experience recognized and discussed. I haven't had the experience of being a patrilineal Jew, so I won't try to speak for anyone, but I have talked to a lot of patrilineal Jews, and I can speak about those folks. And I just read this beautiful poem by Adrienne Rich, which I'll paraphrase. She's a mixed heritage Jewish poet. If you have not heard of her, you should read her work, Adrienne Rich. She talks about the pain of hearing someone describe reality and you're not in it. And I won't presume, as I said, to speak for anyone, but I think it is useful to talk about reality, which includes people like me and other folks who are here and other folks who are not here. So I have a background as a professional facilitator. These things, we're talking about people's most precious experiences and their feelings. This is who they are, where they come from, what they learned, what they really hold to be true, what they love. This topic goes to existential fears. What's going to happen to the Jewish community? Are we losing our people? Are we losing our history, our culture, our traditions? It can be very emotional. So certainly during my talk and during this whole day, I really encourage you to notice where something is really upsetting or off-putting, where you're not comfortable, and ask yourself not why am I uncomfortable, but what would it take for me to be comfortable with this? Because that's what we need, is to be able to get comfortable with things that are unfamiliar to us. I mean that on all sides, for sure. So, reality, number one. There is no pluralistic solution to the question of who's a Jew. Sorry. We might be able to find local solutions in different settings, but the denominational organization that we have in America today really prevents an answer to this question, a flexible answer to this question. We just can take it off the table. Because for some denominations, other people's standards are just not up to their standards, their conversions aren't acceptable, so on, their marriages aren't acceptable. It's off the table. Sure, I'm sorry. Too fast? Sorry, everybody. This is what I do. Try to get through 5 pages of notes. Sorry. The current denominational structure that we have takes a truly pluralistic and sort of one-size-fits-all solution to who is a Jew off the table. And that's not only because the people who we think of as being more frum or more sharp or more mafia or whatever are making problems for the rest of us. It's actually, if you look at sort of the way that, for example, the reform movement requires that people be brought up with appropriate and timely identifications with the Jewish faith, which means if you have 2 Jewish parents, I don't know if they actually go this far, but technically, if you have 2 Jewish parents and you grew up with no Jewish consciousness at all, you're not really a Jew. I don't think that's how it works in practice for them, because I think it's true that if you have 2 Jewish parents, people are not going to fight with you about it, but if you have 1 Jewish parent and you don't have this type of identification and knowledge, you're going to be in trouble. And that is in some ways much more mafia than an Orthodox position that if your mother is Jewish, you're Jewish no matter what else happens. So I really appreciated the introduction to pluralism that Dr. Krauser gave. People here are experts. My definition, at least for the way that I'm going to talk today, firstly, the hope that people who have different Jewish identities and practices can come together for various purposes, from the most immediate and local to the most lasting and permanent. So that includes having a minyan, just one time in somebody's house, creating a synagogue, or perhaps building a state. Secondly, the development of ways of thinking and acting that allow that diverse group to be and act together. No community is entirely pluralistic or not pluralistic. Everybody has something that's totally out of bounds and something that's flexible. If you haven't read, there's a blogger, his name is Ben Dreyfus, and he blogs under Mavravu. If you haven't read his series on Hillfolk pluralism, it's about different types of pluralism, and I highly recommend it. So that's on a kind of a society level, coming up with a policy that allows for diversity and respects it. The individual level is different. We can be profoundly unpluralistic. I'm in a community of lovely people who I love being with, but they're doing it all wrong. Everybody's wrong in their lives. And that is kind of a challenging place to stick yourself. Even more challenging is to take pluralism as a spiritual practice, where you would cultivate a belief in the validity of other people's beliefs. I would not do that, but I really think it's fine for them. I really accept the way that they're living their life. That's not the same as relativism. That would be whatever, no value judgments. But kind of a noting of what is the width of the realm that you think is acceptable and that you would value. So why is it good? It makes for a good conversation, for sure. It makes for a great rabbinical school and a rich community life. And it's important to make Jewish communities places where people feel they belong and they can grow and learn and can relate to God and raise young people. So I don't have to preach about pluralism to you, but just a little bit. So how can you tell if it's working? Are we creating settings where people can really practice and learn and act and grow? So people have to feel safe, they have to feel accepted, like a valid and a wanted member of the group, without having to actually be the same as everybody else. And there's this famous story about Zuzia is dying, he's on his deathbed, and he's crying because he says, I wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu. And the voice says, no, you were supposed to be Zuzia, you're not supposed to be Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's actually not a story about how he wasn't good enough to be Moshe Rabbeinu, it's actually that each person has their own value. But this sometimes leads to the idea of people should feel safe and accepted in a community leads to the idea that we're going to welcome them. Let's welcome some new people to the community. And that already assumes a kind of us and them that we could recognize when they come to our community. But maybe they are already here and they are us. It's amazing to me, just personally, how many mixed heritage Jews are totally silent about this aspect and are not out as mixed heritage people. When I was in Yeshiva Hadar in the year program, a quarter to a third of the students were mixed heritage, and it was it took me months to figure out who all the people were. And sometimes you can figure last names and whatever, but it's hard to tell. In my old shul in Philadelphia, where I used to live, about half of the people of all ages, not just people in their 20s and 30s, were mixed heritage. So that's called passing, when you're hiding a little bit about who you are. And I think people are familiar from the gay community, the queer community, what it looks like when you can't be out, and that being out is a positive value in that community. So part of the discomfort for people who are passing, for people whose identity is not fully accepted, comes from the desire to be accepted, right? And then on the other hand, the resentment of why should anybody have to accept me in the first place? I'm here, I'm myself, deal with it. / I'm just here, not even that level of antagonism. So this is kind of the old Groucho Marx joke about I wouldn't want to be a member of any club that would have me. This is I'm already a member of the club and they think I'm not. So they want me to join the club that I'm already in, and then you start feeling like you don't want to be in that club because they're treating you this way. This is I think people may have seen this more live in action around gay rights, queer rights. When gay people wanted to be accepted to JTS, to the Conservative Rabbinical School, there was this huge push to say welcome us, accept us, allow us, and on the other hand, a huge rage that people would even, in the 21st century need to fight for this when queer rights have been fought in so many battlegrounds in so many places. I'm going to read you a quote from a Patrilineal Jew that I think really exemplifies this. He says, I'm a Jew, it's in my heart. I feel like I'm just as much a Jew as anyone else. Would I go through a conversion? No. It would be like admitting I was not a Jew. It would be denying my roots, my identity, my entire life. This person doesn't need to be welcomed, right? He's here already.